Welcome to Mr. Hutchings History, where the past comes alive. Let's dive into today's story.
All right, so get ready, because we are driving deep into how World War I and World War II
Oh, this is going to be good.
impacted the fight for African American civil rights.
Wow.
And I got to tell you, some of the stories we found
I bet.
from this history podcast,
Oh, cool.
they're just unbelievable. I mean, we're talking about key events, really influential figures,
Right.
and even Rosa Parks.
No way. Before the bus boycott.
Way before. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible to think about how,
Yeah.
these wars,
Mm-hmm.
while they're being fought for democracy overseas, they really kind of like lit a fire under the fight for civil rights here in the
It
U.S. I
is.
mean, the irony of it all.
Oh, the irony is definitely not lost,
Yeah,
especially on
the
Black community at the time.
Black community at the time. Absolutely.
Can you imagine
Yeah.
serving your country,
Yeah.
risking your life
I know.
on some battlefield in Europe? It's only to come back home
Wild.
and still be treated like a second-class citizen.
Second-class citizen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
It was the reality for Black soldiers
that was the reality.
in World War I.
Yeah, and that experience, that contrast, that stark contrast,
Yeah.
that's really, I think, where the seeds were planted
Mm-hmm.
for, this wave of activism.
Yes.
I mean, just think about it, like they were exposed
Wait,
to
go on,
these different cultures and different ideas about freedom
Right.
and equality.
Yeah.
And they came back home,
Yeah.
with a
With the whole...
broader perspective, a brand new perspective, and with this
Yeah.
new determination,
New fire.
fight for,
Right.
to demand their rights.
That's exactly right. And speaking of demanding rights,
Hmm.
this is where W.E.B. Du Bois enters the picture.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
this incredible scholar and activist
Revolution.
wrote this powerful essay. Have you ever heard of this?
Which one?
Returning Soldiers.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like he's urging these Black veterans, hey, keep fighting for freedom.
Right.
But now on American soil, it's like,
Here at home.
yeah, like he's saying, you've proven yourselves on the battlefield.
Great, you earned it.
Now come home and
Mhm.
demand the equality that you deserve.
Yeah, Du Bois, he was
He's visionary.
such a visionary. And, his words,
Yes.
they just resonated
So deeply.
so deeply with the Black community.
Yeah.
This call to action
Yes.
really helped shape the early Black consciousness movement.
Yeah.
And, even led to
Wow, yeah.
the rise of organizations like the NAACP,
Totally.
which would become, that was like a powerhouse.
Huge.
Yeah, in the fight for civil rights.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've got this growing movement for equality, fueled by the experiences of these Black soldiers in World War I, right?
Yeah.
Then World War II comes along.
Mm-hmm.
And even more Black Americans are called to serve, over 1 million this time.
Over 1 million. That's incredible.
And yet again, the same
I was going
pattern
to say the same pattern.
of segregation and discrimination.
So frustrating.
It is. It's so frustrating to imagine, like,
Fighting for freedom abroad.
fighting for freedom over there.
But being denied basic rights at home.
At home.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know.
But here's the thing. World War II also saw the fight for equality, really intensify.
Yes. It's
Like all of a sudden,
it's like the sheer scale of Black involvement,
Yep.
their contributions to the war effort.
totally
It just amplified everything.
amplified the call for change.
Like you can't ignore it anymore.
Hard to ignore. Yeah, you can't ignore the hypocrisy, right?
Exactly.
Of fighting for democracy while still upholding
Yeah.
this system of racial inequality.
Right. Right here.
Right here at home.
Big home.
And out of this, tension, this struggle,
Yeah.
you get some of the most, I think, powerful moments in the fight for civil rights.
Yeah. And you know what really captures that? The V campaign.
Oh, the WorldWarI.
And that was brilliant.
That was brilliant.
Such great symbolism.
Victory against fascism abroad,
Mhm.
victory against racism at home.
At home. And,
I mean, how empowering was that message
it must have been incredibly empowering
for the Black communities to rally behind?
for the Black community. Absolutely.
Yeah,
And the thing is, the V campaign, it wasn't just a slogan.
right.
It was a reflection, I think,
Mhm.
of really the reality, the complex realities of African American life at the time.
At the time,
It
exactly.
gave them a sense of unity
Yes.
and a purpose. but it also sparked important debates, even within the Black community.
Like what?
Oh, well, some civil rights leaders.
They argued that maybe, that the focus on victory abroad, it could overshadow the urgent need for change at home.
That's a good point, because it really shows that even within a movement, there were all these different perspectives and strategies. You know what I mean?
It wasn't a simple, monolithic fight.
No, it was complex.
No, it's this complex tapestry of all these different ideas and actions and different personalities.
Speaking of personalities, APhilipRandolph.
Oh, what a guy.
Now, this is a man who was not afraid to challenge the status quo.
No, he was not.
I mean, in 1941, he threatened a march on Washington to protest discrimination in defense industries.
Bold move.
Huge.
During wartime.
Yeah, that takes guts.
Knowing how people might react.
He knew what he was doing.
He was playing a high-stakes game.
Oh, absolutely. And it paid off.
It did.
Big time.
Big time.
Yeah.
So President Roosevelt...
He's obviously concerned about the impact of this thing.
Of course, yeah.
He issues Executive Order 8802, creating the Fair Employment Practices Committee, the FEPC.
The FEPC, a huge victory.
This was huge.
Yeah.
So the FEPC, they were tasked with making sure that there were fair hiring practices, especially in these booming industries that had all these government contracts.
Right, so
Black workers could finally
get
jobs in these booming industries.
Yeah.
Yes.
And by the war's end,
we're talking about, what, 2 million?
2 million Black workers in defense jobs.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is amazing, but the FEPC, it wasn't a cure-all.
No, of course not. I mean,
it was really underfunded.
Underfunded.
And its powers were limited. Can you imagine trying to combat widespread discrimination with a tiny budget?
Right, and almost no authority.
Yeah, how do you...
It's a recipe for disaster. Right.
So even with this landmark executive order, racism was still happening.
Absolutely.
All over the place.
Right.
It's like taking a step forward and then getting pulled back.
Half a step back.
Yeah.
What else were people doing to challenge segregation?
Oh, well, in 1942, this group of activists, they founded the Congress of Racial Equality, or CORE.
CORE, okay.
And, they were committed to this nonviolent direct action as a way to challenge segregation, especially up north.
Wait, segregation up north? I thought that was a southern...
No, that's a common misconception. Segregation in the north wasn't always the law, but it was definitely deeply embedded in everyday life, housing, employment, public accommodations. CORE targeted this de facto segregation. And they did it in a way that really exposed, I think, the hypocrisy of it all.
I'm really curious, what did they actually do?
Oh, well, their early efforts were focused on direct action. So things like, sit-ins at segregated restaurants, especially in Chicago.
Wow.
These actions were so powerful because it forced people to to confront it. Yeah. And their impact would be felt for decades to come. Think about the freedom rides in the 60s.
Wow.
Those were
direct result.
Directly inspired by this early work.
Wow, so they were really on the leading edge.
To the forefront.
At the forefront, yeah.
Absolutely.
Of a movement that would transform an activity.
And they weren't alone.
Right.
Up in Harlem, at the same time, you had Adam Clayton Powell Jr.
Oh, yeah.
He was leading
a
charge against segregation on the buses.
The Harlem bus boycott.
The Harlem bus boycott of 1941.
1941, that was a
brilliant example of community organizing and the power of economic boycotts.
Yes,
the Black community in Harlem came together.
Yeah, and they said,
we're not going to support a system that treats us like second-class citizens.
And it worked. They forced the city to hire Black bus drivers.
Exactly.
Setting a precedent for future... actions. Talk about empowering.
So empowering.
Yeah.
Showed that even when it feels like there are impossible obstacles, insurmountable obstacles, collective action can bring about
change.
Tangible change.
And it wasn't just happening in the North.
No, you're absolutely right.
Down South.
Racial
tensions were higher.
Way higher.
But Black Americans were finding Wittig to resist.
They were finding a way.
Even if it meant putting themselves in danger.
That great risk.
Yeah. Absolutely. Take, for example, what happened in New Orleans in 1943.
Oh, yeah.
A group of black soldiers on a bus, they refused to move to the back.
They refused to move. I mean, it was...
The driver told them to.
It was extraordinary. Such defiance.
Yeah.
You know, it was fueled by their experiences in the war. Think about it.
It makes sense.
Risked your life for your country.
Yeah.
But you come home.
You got to sit in the back of the bus.
Sit in the back of the bus. Like,
hey, come on.
It's just, it's crazy.
I don't blame them.
I don't blame them either.
They had enough.
Enough is enough.
These small acts of resistance, these sparks of defiance, they were really...
The groundwork.
Laying the groundwork for...
The fight for civil rights that would happen later.
There's a huge movement that's about to unfold.
Yes. And speaking of groundwork, the NAACP.
The NAACP, I mean...
World War II.
Their membership just exploded. Oh, it's skyrocketed.
From like 50,000 in 1940 to over 450,000 by 1945.
That's crazy.
That's incredible.
That tells you that people were waking up
to the injustice.
Ready to fight for change.
And, you know, it just goes to show you the power of grassroots activism and the power of organizations like the NAACP.
Yeah.
You know, they mobilize people around a common cause.
And speaking of the NAACP,
did
you know that Rosa Parks,
Yeah.
she joined back in 1942.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Long before the Montgomery bus boycott.
I always thought
way before
the story started with the bus boycott.
It's amazing. Yeah. Rosa Parks was involved in the fight for civil rights.
She was involved long before that.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a
lesser
known chapter of her life. But, you know, it really shows you
her commitment.
Yeah, the depth of her commitment to social justice.
Yeah.
She didn't just, you know, one day decide
just wake up one day
to not give up her seat on the bus.
Right.
She
was in it.
Fighting for
She was in the fight.
Equal rights for years.
Yeah, behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Quietly?
Quietly, yeah. So what was she doing with the NAACP?
Oh, she was so involved with the fight for voting rights, economic empowerment.
Wow.
She even talked about her own experience with literacy tests and poll taxes, which were just these insidious tools used to disenfranchise
black voters.
So
she had firsthand experience with these systemic barriers keeping black people from voting.
Exactly. And it's just
heartbreaking to think that she had to pay a poll tax just to vote.
Just to vote.
I mean, come on.
It was a stark reality.
I know.
For so many black Americans.
At the time.
And, you know, it's a reminder of the long and hard, difficult struggle
for voting rights.
The voting rights in this country.
In this country, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about this incredible
surge
in activism during the World Wars.
It's amazing.
These pivotal events, these, I mean, really inspiring figures.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But, you know, I'm kind of curious
about
how do historians actually interpret this whole period?
That's a great question.
Because history, it's more than just...
It's not just facts.
Facts. It's about, you know...
It's about how we understand those facts.
Yes. How we understand
them.
And
make sense of them.
And make sense of those facts.
Yeah. So, you know, you have all these different schools of historical thought.
Okay.
And they all offer unique perspectives on this era.
Give me an example.
Okay. So, for example, traditionalist viewpoints often emphasize, you know, how the wars were these like catalysts for change.
Okay.
And they highlight the role of black soldiers in kind of pushing for equality.
Okay. Okay.
Then you have like the progressive historians.
Yeah.
And they might focus more on the role of like government policy, both the successes and limitations in shaping how things unfolded.
Right. Right.
And then, of course...
And then there's critical race theory.
Critical race theory.
Which examines, you know,
like
the lasting effects of racism, how it continues to shape American society.
It continues to shape everything.
Yeah, it's just amazing how...
It's wild, right.
The same events can be
just
understood in so many different ways. But that's history.
That is history.
Yeah.
It's not a monolithic narrative.
No.
It's complex. And it's ever evolving.
It's always evolving.
It's this tapestry of perspectives.
Exactly.
And I think, you know, when we explore these different viewpoints, we get a much richer and more
nuanced understanding of the past.
Understanding of what happened. Yeah.
So what does all this mean for the future?
For the future
of the civil rights movement.
Like, how do the world wars fit in?
To the bigger picture.
Fit into the bigger picture of the fight for equality.
Exactly.
Oh, I think the world wars, as devastating as they were, they really, like, accidentally became this catalyst for the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
You know, the experiences of these black soldiers and civilians, the rise of the NAACP, core, you know, brilliant leaders like
APhilipRandolph.
I mean, all of that just create this momentum for change that just couldn't be ignored.
That you couldn't ignore. It's like, you know, the wars kind of cracked open this door.
Yeah.
And then Black Americans, just fueled by everything they'd been through.
Yeah, by their experiences, by their determination. Pushed that door. They pushed that door wide open.
Wide open.
Yeah, they didn't just fight for democracy abroad. They brought the fight.
They brought it home.
Yeah.
And, you know, all that momentum, it led to some pretty incredible victories.
Yeah.
Like in 1948,
okay,
President Truman signed Executive Order 9981.
Wow.
Desegregating the U.S. military.
1948, that's just 3 years after the end of the war.
I know, it's crazy.
Things were changing so quickly.
Yeah.
The war had just, like, completely...
shifted everything.
Shifted the landscape.
Yeah.
It just shows you the power of, like...
It's really a testament to...
this persistent activism.
Persistent activism and, you know...
And these people...
And the courage. They were so brave.
To speak truth to power.
Yes. And it wasn't just some, you know...
It wasn't just some policy change.
Policy change on paper.
This impacted.
It impacted real people.
Real lives.
Countless black soldiers.
Who had fought so bravely for their country?
Who had fought bravely for their country.
Only to be treated as second-class citizens?
I mean, how did they feel?
Yeah, I mean...
It must have felt
like a huge weight was lifted.
Yeah.
Like, finally, real change is possible.
Yeah, and it wasn't just a victory for black soldiers.
Right.
It was a victory for everyone.
For the entire civil rights movement.
Yeah.
Executive Order 9981. It was a watershed moment.
A real step.
A tangible step.
Yeah.
Toward dismantling these racial barriers.
And, you know, it didn't happen overnight.
No. It was
years
in the making.
Struggle.
Protests, boycotts.
I mean, so much courage.
Big and small.
Both big and small. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder.
Like,
how different things would have been without these world wars.
Yeah, what if the world wars hadn't happened?
It's strange to think, right?
It's such
these horrific conflicts.
Yeah, these global tragedies.
Actually led to social progress.
They kind of, it's a paradox.
Yeah, it's a paradox.
But history's full of them.
It is.
And in this case, the fight for freedom abroad. It just became so closely tied to the fight for equality at home.
It's almost like a ripple effect.
It is. It's like a ripple effect.
Each action.
Each event.
Creates these waves.
These waves that just spread out.
Yeah.
And they change everything.
The
landscape of American society.
And those ripples, I mean, they continue to this day.
They do.
We're still dealing with...
Still grappling with.
The legacy of racism. We're still fighting for equality and justice.
Absolutely. And it's just a reminder, you know, that the work is never really done.
The work is never done. It's a journey.
It's a journey.
Not a destination.
Not a destination. That's exactly right.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with this one question.
Okay.
How do the challenges that these African-American soldiers face
during the World War?
During the World Wars, how do they connect with the struggles for equality that we're still seeing?
That's such a powerful question.
What can we learn from their experiences?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question that I think each of us has to kind of wrestle with.
Yeah.
You know, the fight for civil rights.
It doesn't
stop at a certain time.
End at a certain time.
Or at a certain place.
It's an ongoing struggle.
It is.
A global movement.
A global movement for justice.
For justice and human dignity.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like this torch that gets passed down.
From one generation to the next.
And it's our job.
And it's our responsibility.
To keep that flame alive.
To keep that flame burning bright.
I couldn't agree more.
And... you know, I think when we remember the sacrifices of those who came before us, when we honor their legacy
of courage,
of determination, I think that's where we find the strength,
the
and the inspiration
to continue the fight.
Yeah. For a more just and equitable world.
You know, when we started this deep dive,
yeah,
I thought I knew a lot about this period of history, but I have learned so much.
I know, it's been amazing.
The WorldWarI, these unsung heroes.
James Farmer.
APhilipRandolph, wow.
It's been a privilege, really, to kind of explore this
critical chapter.
This critical chapter of American history with you.
It really is a critical chapter.
And, you know, it's just one piece of a much larger story.
There's always more to learn.
Always more to learn.
More to discover. That's what makes history so fascinating.
It's a never-ending journey of exploration and discovery.
Exactly.
And I think by engaging with the past, by really
wrestling with it,
wrestling with its complexities, its contradictions, I think we gain these valuable insights into the present, and then hopefully we can shape
a better future.
A better future for generations to come.
It's interesting, right? We've been talking about all these landmark achievements and, you know, the sheer determination
of those fighting for equality.
It's easy to focus on the good stuff.
Yeah, the triumphs.
Yeah, the triumphs, but progress, it's not always a straight line, right?
It's not a straight line, no.
There are setbacks, challenges,
and even unintended consequences.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Even from,
from policies
that intentions.
Yeah, they sound good on paper.
Exactly. Take, for example, the GI Bill.
Oh, the GI Bill. Okay.
It was supposed to be this positive thing.
To help veterans.
To help veterans transition back to civilian life.
Okay, yeah.
After World War II.
Makes sense.
I mean, on the surface, fantastic idea.
Right, education.
Education benefits, housing loans.
Job training.
But the reality was...
much
more complicated.
Especially for Black veterans.
Because...
Because, I mean, it had this potential, right?
Huge potential.
To level the playing field.
But totally.
But the way it was implemented.
Yeah, I mean, so often it reflected...
It just, reflected that same racism.
Systemic racism?
That they had been fighting against.
Yeah, that they've been dealing with for generations.
Yeah. It's
they could get...
Access to these benefits wasn't equal.
It wasn't equal, right.
Black veterans...
Yeah.
Faced discrimination from banks.
Now, who didn't want to give them loans, universities...
Were slow to desegregate.
And then even employers.
Employers who were just
Yeah, who still had these racist hiring practices.
What? It's come on, guys.
It just shows you, you
can't just...
Even well-intentioned policies...
Yeah, you got it.
Can fail if you don't actually address the root causes. Of inequality.
It's like building a bridge, right?
Yeah.
To a better future.
But
you forget to make it accessible to everyone.
That's a great analogy, yeah.
And then those consequences...
I mean, they've echoed...
This oversight.
Through the decades.
They're not addressing...
The systemic racism.
Yeah.
It's had an impact.
Absolutely. And, the GI Bill...
Yeah.
I mean, as much as it did good for a lot of people...
Yeah.
It
unintentionally contributed to this.
Widening wealth gap.
Between
Black and white Americans.
Because they couldn't buy homes? Limited access to housing loans.
Yeah.
Black families.
Black families missed out.
On the chance to build generational wealth.
Through homeownership.
Yeah, homeownership's a huge...
Which is such a key driver.
Driver of economic mobility.
It's crazy how...
History is not just about isolated events. It's about
the connections.
Yeah, the connections, how these events influence one another.
Yeah, like a chain reaction.
And then, how these consequences ripple out.
And shape the world.
We live in today.
Yeah. And I think by recognizing
these connections.
Not just connections.
By really delving
deeper into the past.
The complexities of the past.
Yeah, that's how we get a more
nuanced and informed perspective on the present.
Yeah, we start to see how
the struggles of the past.
Yeah, it still is so relevant.
It's still so relevant.
Yeah, how fight for equality.
It's an ongoing process. Ongoing. It never stops.
And it requires
constant vigilance, constant action.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
this incredible deep dive
into this fascinating and really
crucial
chapter of American history.
I'm left with this feeling.
Yeah, this feeling of hope.
But also this urgency.
Yeah, hope.
Hope because we've seen what people can do.
The power of collective action.
The
resilience of the human spirit.
We can make a difference.
And the possibility of real change.
Real change.
Real meaningful change.
And urgency because,
urgency because
it's not over.
It's far from over.
It's far from over.
The echoes of the past are still present in the challenges we face today, reminding us that the pursuit of justice,
it requires effort,
constant effort, unwavering commitment, and
a willingness to
really learn.
Learn from our mistakes. Learn from the triumphs and the shortcomings of those who came before us.
This has been an incredible journey.
It has.
And I want to thank you.
Thank you to our listeners.
Our listeners for joining us.
Yeah, for coming along with us.
And just remember, history isn't just something we read about.
It's not just in textbooks.
In a textbook, it's alive.
It's a living narrative.
It shapes who we are.
That shapes who we are in the world we live in.
So keep exploring.
Keep questioning.
Keep questioning.
Keep the conversation going.
And never underestimate.
Never underestimate.
Your own ability to make a difference.
Your power.
Because
we've seen...
even these small acts of courage.
Yeah, these small acts of courage and defiance.
They can have a huge impact.
A huge impact. They ripple out.
They ripple out and they shape the course of history.
They change everything.
They really do. They really do.
Thanks for listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.